Or a lot. Yeah, that's true. We're going to hop around a little bit today, but I think we're going to spend most of our time when we're ready for it in Matthew chapter 23. But we don't have to get there just yet. So this is session number 2 of exploring just brokenness and what that looks like, what that means. And since there's fewer of us, we're going to have to be more communicative. You have to carry more of the weight each year instead of spreading it out a little bit. So I have questions that are a little bit more interactive. When we all think of, or what you think of, what it means to be a Christian, what comes to mind, like immediately, first thing? What does it mean to be a Christian? It's not rhetorical.
Right.
You belong to the family of God.
Belong to the family of God? Yep, good. What else?
Choose to follow Jesus.
Choosing to follow Jesus. Yep. Anything else? What it means to be a Christian?
You have to act perfect.
I have to act perfect. Okay, we're going to get into that one today. Maybe that's not necessarily what we particularly believe. I think, in my follow-up question here, what do you think the world thinks it means? I think that's something they definitely hold on to.
That's exactly what, yeah.
Is that where you're heading with that one?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's what people expect from us.
So yeah, second question, what do you think that comes to mind about being Christian from the world's perspective? And that one is a huge one. You have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You have to live a perfect life. You have to do everything perfect. You can't mess up. What else? What the world say it means to be a Christian? Different.
Different.
Yeah. Stand
They
apart.
have to be cautious around us.
Oh, they have to be cautious around us because we're not safe?
Because of what we're gonna think of them.
Judge-
If they cuss
judgment.
or if they whatever.
If they cuss or they have tattoos or piercings in different places,
That's
are we
what
going to,
think about all those things?
yeah, are we going to judge them?
Yeah.
Right? That's a huge one. To the unchurched or post-church people, you know, they think of Christianity and the church is very different than we do. We understand it means just being Christian just means following Jesus. But sometimes those attitudes of the unchurched or post-church people come and seep back in, you know, about certain beliefs we're supposed to do. Our conduct is often tied to what others around us believe. Is that a weird notion? Crazy sounding? That our conduct might be tied to what other people around us believe about us, or even believe about our eternal life. They ascribe meaning to our behaviors and they think it has some kind of connection to what's going on inside. And that's not necessarily a crazy idea. The most basic functions of being Christian and Christian conduct is rooted in the fruits of the Spirit. That's my perspective, at least. You know, evidence of the Spirit working in us that produces fruit. The fruits of the Spirit does not mean when you accept Jesus in your life, automatically you are full of these things. It's a process. Growing fruit produces, or takes time. It takes time to yield a crop. It takes a lot of hard work and effort to yield this crop. Galatians 5:20-23 lists them as the fruits of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. And it says, against such things there is no law. These are things that people outside of the church aspire to as well. You look at other major religions, and these are basically almost tenets of most of them. Some are not, but a lot of them have the same ideals. The process to get there, though, is in Christianity is that fundamentally you have to have that foundation of Christ, and it helps you get there. Cares work, though. Do our lives show these fruits of the Spirit? I mean, here in this room, of course, right? Because we're good Christians, okay? And you guys at home too, you're good Christians. So of course they show up.
Good Christian.
Good Christians. So we see these things in our lives. But arguably, and not to cast the first stone here, but arguably there are people in every church who they do these things, but nothing's actually going on inside. They can do these things pretty well. 1 John 2:9 says, anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or sister is still in the darkness. The word for hate here is mizio, and it means to hate or detest, which can also be seen as meaning to love less. Now, does that mean that if you love someone a little bit less than someone else that you hate them or detest them? I don't think so.
No.
I don't think that's necessarily where it's headed. But there are people who are extremely difficult to love in our lives. Hopefully no one immediately came to mind, but probably did. Someone did for me. And it's just, there are people in our lives who it is extremely difficult or way harder to love. And that feeling of detestment is the thing that comes to mind for myself, where it's like, there are people in our life we are called to love, but you want absolutely nothing to do with them. That's detestment, right? And yet we are called to love, because if we don't, we are in darkness, not in the light. James 1:22 and 1:26 say this, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves, do what it says. And then 26 says, those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. The Bible has so many verses just perfectly warring against and warning us against hypocrisy. It's all throughout the Old and New Testament. Don't be hypocrites. Not just because hypocrisy is harmful to us, but it hurts others, and it hurts our witness to the world. One of the words that didn't come up earlier is just hypocrites. The outside world, the unchurched, think Christians are just blatantly hypocrites. You know, you say you believe in, all life is sacred, but then you don't care what happens after they're born. Yeah, that's a big problem of a lot of churches and a lot of religious people, is once you're born, like, okay, you're good, but you better not do anything beforehand. And it looks like hypocrisy at surface level. Of course, once you get deeper, it's not, but at the surface, so much of it just looks flimsy, and it looks like it has double meanings. In Matthew 23, which I'm going to read here, Jesus warns 7 times against hypocrisy alone. This is not the only time he warns against hypocrisy. It's just one of the times that it has the most amount of warning. So I'm just going to read chapter 23. So bear with me. I'm just going to read the whole thing. There's a lot of it. Jesus spoke to the crowds and his disciples, saying, the scribes and the Pharisees have seated themselves in the chair of Moses. Therefore, all that they tell you to do and observe, but do not do according to their deeds, for they say things and do not do them. What's another word for that? Hypocrisy.
Is that the same as a hypocrite?
Huh?
Is that the same as a hypocrite?
Yeah, say things and do not do them.
Yeah, that's a
hypocrisy.
Hypocrite, right?
Yep, hypocrite.
Same thing, right?
Same thing.
Okay.
They're being hypocrites. So he doesn't quote, he says the word hypocrisy or hypocrite 7 times, but then he alludes to it almost every other verse. Okay. They tie up heavy burdens and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves are unwilling to move them with so much as a finger. They do all their deeds to be noticed by men, for they broaden their phylacteries and lengthen the tassels of their gardens. Phylacteries were a prayer box they would wear around themselves that would draw attention. In this case, what he's alluding to is they made them larger than they needed to be, so people would always see them. And lengthen the tassels of their garments, they had ceremonial clothes, so it would really stand out. Everything they do was to draw attention to them. They love the place of honor at banquets and the chief seats in the synagogues and respectful greetings in the marketplaces and being called rabbi by men. But do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher. But do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, and you are all brothers. Do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your father, he is in heaven. Do not be called leaders, for one is your leader, that is Christ. But the greatest among you shall be your servant. Whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, whoever humbles himself shall be exalted. Then he starts getting into woes. He has a whole bunch of woes for them. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you shut off the kingdom of heaven from people, for you do not enter in yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense you make long prayers, and therefore you receive greater condemnation. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel around on sea and land and make one proselyte. And when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Woe to you, blind guides who say, whoever swears by the temple, that is nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the temple is obligated. You fools and blind men, which is more important, the gold or the temple that is sanctified? Sanctify the gold. And whoever swears by the altar, that is nothing, but whoever swears by the offering on it, he is obligated. You blind men, which is more important, the offering or the altar that sanctifies the offering? Therefore, whoever swears by the altar swears both by the altar and everything on it. And whoever swears by the temple swears both by the temple and by him who dwells within it. Whoever swears by heaven swears both by the throne of God and by him who sits upon it. This is talking about, one, the sanctification of tithe, essentially, but also just how they were using the temple. They were using it in a way that was focusing on the material, not on the spiritual aspects of it. We talked about beforehand, a lot of the Pharisees had their hands in the politics of the temple and the temple grounds, and basically were using the marketers, the vendors there to enrich their own pockets. And he's alluding to this here. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you tithe mint and dill and cumin, and have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, justice and mercy and faithfulness. But these are the things you should have done without neglecting the others. You blind guides who strain out a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you clean the outside of the cup out of the dish, but inside they are full of robbery and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the dish, so that outside may become clean also. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are all like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful, but inside they are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. So you too outwardly appear righteous to men, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. We can keep going, but that's the gist of it. What is he attacking here? What is he calling out? Huh?
Just people that they just do things just to show, right? Is that what I'm talking about? You know,
That they what?
just people, hypocrites.
They're hypocrites, plain and simple.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
of
what they
course,
do, yeah.
of course, there were good Pharisees,
Yeah.
but the word slowly became synonymous with hypocrite. The Pharisees were the godliest of the godliest. They were the leaders. They were teachers. They were lawyers. They were the ones who were supposedly put in place with God's blessing to lead the Israelite people. And they were corrupt to their core in terms of their hierarchy, their leadership. The high priest, everything was corrupted beyond redemption at this point. And again, let's not say there weren't good ones. There were. There's a few even mentioned in the Bible. But as a whole, the group became synonymous with hypocrites for a very clear reason. They did one thing and absolutely said another. Matthew 6:5 has another passage about it. And when you pray, you are not to be like hypocrites. He's not talking specifically about Pharisees now, but he's describing their behavior. For they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners so that they will be seen by people. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. The Jewish custom he's referring to was basically they would pray in common areas or the synagogues, and it would be a way of initiating community. You would see someone and they'd be out there just doing this, just praying, and it would be a way of initiating community, so others would come and join them in prayer and in thanksgiving. It was not a, hey, look at me. The behavior he's calling out here is people started doing it as a, hey, look at me, I'm holy, I'm praying, I'm a good person, to attract notice to themselves and not glorify God. The mask of perfection that these people were wearing was a thin veil to demonstrate their devotion, but it was always to bring attention and glory to themselves. In their hearts, they harbored darkness and even hatred. What is the mask of perfection? And that's, in the Bible times. What does the mask of perfection look like in modern church? Non-rhetorical.
Being a part of groups, just to be a part of the group for the notoriety, putting on that image of, I don't want to say goodness, but the image of being the good Christian.
So joining groups for the notoriety of the groups, the membership of those groups, and then that kind of persona of the good Christian, right? What else? What does it look like? I don't think I've seen it here, but I've seen it in other churches where people are excellent servants, but they do it because they like getting the pats on the back, not because they like to serve, right? What are some of the things you've seen or experienced? This mask of perfection in the modern church. It's hard. I mean, basically, they're different categories of kind of the same thing. So I guess let's switch gears here. Why do we wear these masks in the first place in church? It's supposed to be a place where we're coming and accepted. Why do we wear these things?
I think maybe start to fit in, I guess.
To fit in?
Yeah.
Yeah. right?
Yeah.
We want to be able to
I
fit into the
think,
group.
Personally, I think a lot of people will
Well,
start there.
there's this very specific image of what Christians are supposed to look like, both within the church and outside of it, so try to match that persona.
Yeah, to match that image that we've been taught what they're supposed to look like, right? But then we get here, and ideally we're taught that's not what it is, but then we keep doing it, right? And you were saying part of it was to fit in, right? So everyone's showing up thinking maybe the same thing. I have to be this image of what the Christian's supposed to be, and we all keep kind of carrying the same lie in our back pocket kind of deal. Yeah? What else?
We want people to see our warts.
We want them to see our works.
No, we don't want them to see our warts.
Oh, our warts.
Yeah.
Yes. We don't want them to see the junk. We're trying to hide the junk. Absolutely.
Takes a lot of energy.
A lot of energy. What else? Other reasons we wear these masks.
Insecurities.
A lot of insecurities, fear, right? Whether it's fear of judgment or reprisal or something else, or fear of just our own past. Some people come in, they put the mask on because it's to forget what's going on in life. If I just come here, I can be in this safe place and kind of forget things, and I can be someone else for a little bit. And then they go right back to what they were doing before when they leave the building. So people don't like who they are. They will try to copy others, emulate others, and want to be something different. Sometimes we try to be the perfect person by copying the best characteristics of someone else we see. We may look good on the outside, but inside we still suffer because we know it's not really us. These masks harm us deeply, but we keep wearing them. Why do we feel like we need to wear them?
People might not accept us.
Go back to the acceptance piece. I think that's really huge, in all honesty. We just want to belong. And if we don't match this perceived idea of what we're supposed to be, then they're going to push us away, they're going to reject us, they're going to consequence us, they're going to something, right? The thing that's beyond weird, though, is that often, most of the time, these masks fail. Like, most of the time, they fail. One of the reasons why is, I think this is a unique aspect of our culture, and Western culture in general, but our culture is saturated with miscommunication. Like, it's everywhere. Fake news and all that stuff, right? But also sarcasm. Passive-aggressive communication is everywhere in our talks. Some phrases have lost all of their literal meaning because they've been completely overturned and overruled by their sarcastic counterpoints, right? Big deal. That's a sarcastic statement in and of itself, huh?
I was just gonna say, we worry more about what others think than what Christ thinks. And
Yes.
That's what's important.
We're struggling on the person-to-person level instead of what we're supposed to be focused on. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Two more phrases that came to mind about the sarcastic things that make no more sense now, literally. So there's big deal, yeah, right, aren't you special, right? This is to name a few. Children as early as 5 can detect sarcasm, saying one thing and meaning another. So we know this about ourselves. Even little kids get it. But then we show up with the mask on and deceive ourselves that no one's going to notice. Some people don't. Some people don't. Most of us notice the fakeness. Most of us notice the masks. It depends on how deep the rabbit hole goes. When I was working at a juvenile offender program a while ago, we had a big group that was called Multifamily Group. And we had one special group called Unmasking. And the program director at the time, and over time, had gathered these very well, masterfully crafted theater masks that, were kind of like Phantom of the Opera kind of style out there personas. And each one represented a distortion in our thinking. So we had Blockhead, which was a guy who had a brick coming out of his mouth. We had Two-Face, we had Snake Tongue, and we had Mr. Black and White. There's a few other ones. And each mask was worn in a role-play conversation to show how easily we avoid accountability for our actions with these masks. The Christian mask is not always so obvious. It's really not. It comes in, it smiles, it greets people, it reads the Bible, brings our Bible to church, it prays, it serves communion. It does all these things. But sometimes there's glaring holes in it we see through the cracks. So what are we supposed to do about this mask? And next time when we're talking, we're going to go through more steps about how to unmask. But what are we supposed to do about this? How do we start taking the mask off in the first place?
It comes down to that safety piece.
Feeling safe?
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna open up to someone, you know, being accountable. I mean, most people don't like to be accountable because you have to share what's really going on inside. And now it's that you're gonna start judging me. Whoa, type of a reaction.
There's a huge fear of accountability.
So again,
Yeah.
fear is something that, to get rid of a mask, you have to get rid of the fear. And that's hard to get over.
It's very terrifying to be open and vulnerable because you'd like to think you can kind of surmise someone's reaction, but oftentimes we're completely wrong. I love doing this at work. Kids will come in, they have like a whole conversation. You ever plan out a whole conversation you have with someone, like a serious conversation? You ever do that? The entire thing, I'm gonna say this, they're gonna say this, and I'm gonna say this, and they're gonna go, and read all these things, right? How quickly does that plan fall apart when it actually happens?
First curve.
Huh?
The first curve.
Very.
The first response. They say something you weren't expecting, and you're like, I don't have a script anymore. It's gone,
Yeah.
right? We are terrible at guessing how people are going to respond to things because we tend to do a projection bias. We tend to push onto them what our own thoughts and feelings are instead of trying to understand theirs. And that's normal. It's natural. It's human. Even professionals, like I'm supposed to only say certain things when I can guess what the reaction is going to be. Sometimes they surprise me at work, and I'm like, I did not expect that response.
Yeah.
And it's like sometimes it's just a very patented answer, but we come to church and we're hopeful that someone's going to be open and forgiving and kind to us. We're expecting rejection and hurt and anger and all these negative things.
Yeah. The only way you can do that, you have to be honest and with open heart. If you're gonna have a conversation, whatever the situation is, you have to be open and straight.
Yeah, open and straight
Open.
shooting.
Yeah, and then you have no issues because you're saying what's in your head and your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever they throw you at, it doesn't matter because you're saying, when you're trying to make something up, it doesn't work. No, it's a puzzle.
Do you know why most lies fail?
Yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah, why do most lies fail over time?
Why?
Yeah, why do most lies fail?
Because they're not real.
They're not real?
They're
Yeah.
not real.
We forget what we lied about.
Yeah.
What was that?
We forget what we lied about.
We forget what we lied about.
Yeah.
This is a psychological truth, right? It is so much harder to remember lies because you don't remember who you told what. If you just tell the truth every time, it's easy to remember what you told people. It's the truth,
It's right there. It's
right?
there. Yeah.
Even embellishment story, it's like, oh yeah, the fish was this big, and then you told someone else it was this big, and you're like, did I tell this person it was this big or this big? You just tell it's a simple thing. It's a white lie, right? But it's an embellishment. You forget what you tell people. And so lies fall apart so quickly and so terrifyingly quickly because we just can't keep straight of them. It's a web of lies, and the first thread that gets snapped, the whole thing crumbles, right? In the church, it's exhausting to keep this mask on. It's exhausting because you have to do everything right. And the moment the mask comes off, or the moment it fails, everything crumbles, and you see kind of really big events happen. I think part of it, in terms of what to do about this, is when we embrace the fruits of the spirits as traits you desire in your life, you have to act upon them. You have to seek opportunity for them to grow. That mask coming off, the very first step is vulnerability. And that's terrifying, right? A while ago, we had the Genesis Project here in the church, and I loved that program. It was really helpful and insightful, but it's all about vulnerability. And it's scary to be vulnerable. You just don't know how they're going to respond. There's fear of judgment. But if there's mutual vulnerability in a system, it's way safer. If everyone came to church, not being like 100% like wearing their heart on their sleeve, like you had a list of all the things wrong in your life on your chest, like here it is, here's everything. That'd get overwhelming. That's too much life. But bits and pieces of it, sharing what's really going on in your life, it's terrifying, but if you do it in a way that others are responsive to it and careful about it, it's so safe. That takes communal effort to do. I think another aspect of why this happens is we kind of live in the age of perfection right now with the online world. There's a term, it's Insta-worthy, which I think is such a silly phrase, but it's what it is for Instagram, right? It's a word that captures the spirit of our current age, and sociologists and psychologists are really enraptured by this word in this age of perfection. And whether it's our bodies, our timelines, our homes, many of us feel constant pressure to present everything as going perfect or well. Social media, when you look at it, it's about 10% of the best of your life and 10% of the worst. You share the big things, right? Oh, someone in my family passed away. That's one of the worst things. Oh, someone's getting married. It's one of the best things. Everything in between, not really happening. It's not really shared. And even then, we finally curate the message. Even those 10% worst and best, we finally curate what's happening. And this is a natural thing we do. We don't necessarily try to intentionally do it. It's just part of the process. One of the things that I've found fascinating with my work is we've seen a really marked increase in depression since social media became a thing. Which is weird, right? We're the most connected we've ever been, so why is depression on the rise?
Because people only see like the big things going on in other people's lives. Oh, look how great their life is going. But not seeing what's behind the scenes.
They don't see anything behind the scenes. They know about people and things, but they don't know them anymore, right? I know people who like to hang out once in a while, and they're just constant social media. They get together, they have no idea what to talk about. It's like, oh, well, how's so? Oh, I already know because I saw your post about, well, how's this? Oh, well, I already know because I already read it, right? So we know about things, but we don't know the person anymore. Another aspect of it is when we were kids with no social media, right? Like pre-MySpace, okay? When our friends were hanging out without us, did you know? Did you know they were gathered together hanging out?
Yeah, because they talk about it when we got together.
Afterwards, right? But in the middle of it, you wouldn't know anything about it. You didn't know what's happening right now. Of course, like the next day at school, like, oh, that party's great. Like, what party?
Yeah.
Right? But it's already gone. It's like, okay, well, that kind of stinks. You don't know it live. They're not live streaming the party. You're missing it right now. I also think it's crazy that, people have cameras everywhere now. Like I have one right here in front of me, and there's one over there. They're two pointing at me because I'm a narcissist, apparently. But we always have to present our best selves now wherever we go because, a random photo is going to get posted online with these 20 megapixel cameras that for some reason can see every single pore across the room. We have to be perfect. Everything has to be presented perfect. It's exhausting. And so we're seeing this culturally and socially, and it comes into the church. Author Candace Lapland described this pressure, and I have a quote here, I liked it. We have become a culture wildly afraid of imperfection. In our insta-everything world, we give people our good side, we pose, we curate, and in a world like this, the pressure for surface appearances has created no room for mistakes, compassions, nor imperfections. We live in a world right now that demands apology but forgives nothing. That's one of the instant things, and it's instant gratification. And because of this world of perfection that we're supposed to live in, that culture has bled into the church really well. So in terms of just the world's perception of Christians, yes, they see us as hypocrites, but I think they also know that everything is hypocritical. That's why they project that onto us. I mean, we have done some things in the past that have maybe not helped that cause and that persona. Another quote here from an author, Will Storr. Let me see here. In this book called Selfie, we put on a false front of seeming perfect, where you cover up mistakes and shortcomings. That mask we put on has to be perfect. There can't be any cracks or blemishes in it. We come to church with the same kind of mask. It's just a slightly different one. It's the Christian perfect one. And even though, people are trying to be more authentic, even in social media world, there's keeping it real hashtag things and, here's my no makeup post, right, ever have you. Those are still, these photos of reality are still published with some curation happening. Oftentimes, our cyber friends don't even know the real us anymore, and we're still somewhat safe from vulnerability, the risk of failure, because we have control over what we're posting still. Right. Even that, there's the no makeup picture. Well, you don't see the 300 other pictures they took till they got to that one. You don't see that. So even in our imperfection, we're trying to make sure people see the most perfect version of it, and that's not being vulnerable. This is not like an anti-social media tirade today. I'm just letting you know. I think it's a symptom of the problem. I don't think it's the root of the problem. I think it's a symptom of it. So we have to choose to be the real us. Society is based on the masks we wear. That's John Marchson, an author as well. And in the imperfection, that's very much true. We wear these masks, and so we come to church in our church culture, and we have these masks on, and we kind of get lost in what to do with them. Next week, we're going to talk more about how to take them off, and what that looks like, and how it's ugly. And there's some good examples in the Bible of people who do that. So we're going to see a few of those too. Yeah. That's the end of my notes.
We're what?
Huh?
Next week we are what?
Oh, next week we're going to look more at how to take it off fully.
We'll take it off.
Yeah, how to take the mask off and what that looks like and what's underneath and why we want to avoid it more. And looking at some scripture as well about that. And there's lots of people in the Bible who wore masks. Paul, he started with masks. He did. Until he didn't. He was this perfect, Pharisee essentially. Everything was going right, and it was a mask covering up the yuck underneath. So we're going to look more at some of that stuff next time. But this is just interesting into just how these things work and why we put them on in the first place. But it's a messy process. There's no easy answer for this. We don't want people to see that we have cracks and that we're broken, because it hurts to remind us some of those things. When you experience true safety, that hurt doesn't hurt anymore. It's an amazing thing if you've experienced it, where you come in and you're with someone who's safe and comforting and encouraging. It doesn't hurt. It's true acceptance. We obviously have a wonderful Heavenly Father who gives us that as well, but at a human level, we still need it too. So we're going to look more into that.